Hello, everybody, and welcome on into the starting nine. Martino Puccio, Mike Phillips, alongside both of you. We're here for the second episode, still pre-recording, working out a little bit of the kinks at the start of this. So be happy to join us for the coming baseball season. So we're going to be breaking down everything into 9 topics, just like 9 innings in baseball. 3 on the New York Mets, 3 on the New York Yankees, and 3 in total encompassing Major League Baseball or just baseball as a sport, because of the topics that we have this week. Mike, how are you doing? And are you ready for everything? I mean, we're seeing snow melt a little bit, even though it didn't snow this morning.
I would take a week in St. Lucie or Tampa right now over what we're getting over here.
Yeah, just a little bit. Very jealous of seeing all the Mets beat reporters go down to Port St. Lucie and start filming Bo Bichette taking grounders at third base. It's been a huge topic of discussion. Shocker. Because when Nick Castellanos might move to first base, Mike, it's all savvy, but Bo Bichette moving to third. There was a throw in his first, I guess you could say, whatever, debut for the Mets, where the throw was a little bit off the bag. It wasn't as bad as a lot of people were making it seem, but they were blowing many things out of proportion with Bo there. And then we see yesterday against the Houston Astros, maybe he did take the shortstop's ball, but he made a great rangy play to throw to first base. So he's 1 for 2, and batting 500 in Major League Baseball is not too bad, but it is defensive. Again, I feel like this is all overblown. This is the time that you're supposed to be ironing out all these issues mechanically as a player. And yeah, I mean, to me, this again, week in, week out, a silly topic of conversation when it comes to the negativity. Your initial thoughts on not only the discourse with Bo Bichette, but just how he seems to be handling the transition so far.
I mean, he seems fine. I know he said recently that he's talking to guys like Nolan Arenado for input on how to play third, which
Pretty good guy, yeah.
that's a pretty good guy to reach out to if you're in that situation with Bo Bichette. And he's gonna have his hiccups, like the much maligned error that like was amplified across the internet. Like, does the throw great? No, the first inch should still catch it. It was in and out of his glove, and it was a backup first inch he's not going to be playing with in the regular season. So keep that in mind. And he's the guy, an athlete here, and we've seen plenty of shortstops make that move to third and be fine, including one guy who should be in the Hall of Fame if not for certain steroid issues. But I think Bo Bichette will be fine in the long run.
Yeah, I think so too. And how many times do we have to say the main reason, that Bo was signed was because of his bat? As long as his bat translates, which it will, and then on top of his health, those are the 2 major concerns. I think tertiary is the defense here. And even then, we're kind of talking about someone who isn't going to be terrible. And even if he was, say, below average, Mike, kind of like Soto was as a whole in the outfield, the elite offense makes up for all of that, which was kind of obviously the main beef on the Alonso stuff. And thankfully, we will not be discussing him today. But Bichette is doing everything that's kind of been asked of him already. He's just doing the drills. It's the second game. We're still in February, mind you. I think we're a month and 2 days away from opening day against the Pittsburgh Pirates. I think it's silly. I think it's nonsense to kind of exaggerate the defensive plays here. But is there anything that you actually want to see from Bo in spring training that makes you feel a lot better about his situation in transition to third? Or is it just really like, who cares? I'll only be concerned when the games start.
For me, as long as he's playing there and getting reps and seeing things in actual game action, that won't matter to me too much, because the thing that we worry about, like if, for instance, he tweaks an ankle or something, has to miss a week of reps, that might be a problem. I think other than that, I'm not worried about it, because I think he'll be fine. They can always, make defensive adjustments later if they absolutely need to. So that'll be fine.
Yeah, totally. And you have to get those reps in there, especially when you're transitioning like that. We'll probably see Jorge Polanco, and then who knows where Brett Beatty will be playing. But as we mentioned last week, those players are getting a slow ramp up to spring training. But someone who is not taking a slow approach, Mike, is Juan Soto. Right now, these comments about, Shohei Ohtani and saying he's got to keep on doing what he's doing because I'm coming for him in regards to the MVP award. I love that energy. I don't like that he's poking Shohei Ohtani, because God knows he could probably pull off a 60-60 season if you really dare the guy. But this type of comment from Juan Soto, it's not just about the comment itself or this season. I think it's not a 180 compared to last year, but to a lot of reports and comments and stories out of spring training, it seems that Soto's far more comfortable this spring training than he was last year.
Well, yeah, I mean, now he's been there for a year. He's got his own situation. He suggested he goes to left field, and he seems to be doing just fine over there. And what
Yes.
we can tell here, like, this is a guy who has swagger when he wants it. And him saying, what, I want this MVP. Like, it's not Shohei's league, it's gonna be my league. I'm gonna make him work for it, if not get it myself. Like, that's stuff you want to see as a Met fan, because like this is a guy. We're not getting more of this discourse about how he's missing the Bronx, or like
Yeah.
how he's so sad he's not playing with Aaron Judge. Like, he's like, he wants to be here and he wants to be the first MVP in Met history. So like all the power
Exactly.
to try and get it done.
And that's completely on the line there too, which is one of the more fascinating statistics about the New York Mets, having so many Cy Young Award winners, but just two no hitters in their history, if you want to count the combined one. For me, with Soto,
I was at the combined one. That counts.
You do have to get that. I do have my tickets in my draw. By the way, just I don't know if you could see on the outside of this. The ticket is incorrect because it says Game 1 of the NLCS from 2006, but that is from Game 2. So just to put the perspective here for the both of us, I love this. This energy is exactly what I want from a New York Met. And this is historically what the best Mets teams always had. Someone who's got that fire lit under his ass, not caring about the comments from the general public. We've seen Mets players have that in the past, but a guy as good as Soto, it's completely different, right? This is the most talented hitter that they've had in franchise history. To come out and say something like that after a near career season, I guess you could say, encompassing, the stolen bases. I love that. And it felt like last year, Juan was relatively unlucky to start the year. Then obviously his June was historic and put together one of the best all-time offensive seasons for the Mets. So if he's coming off one of the best offensive seasons in Mets history and saying he wants the MVP now, we'll see. I mean, I think Shohei is a one of one. He is a unicorn. As long as he is healthy and pitching and hitting, I think he still will be the MVP. It is going to be so difficult to supplant him in that regard. I only kind of see Juan Soto, Mike, being the MVP of the NL if Shohei Ohtani misses some time. And it has nothing to do with Juan Soto and his ability. But, I mean, Shohei is the absolute unicorn, one of the most unique players, and honestly, the best two-way player that has ever existed in sports history. Do you think Juan Soto can win the MVP this year?
I think one thing you can't forget here is that there is a thing called voter fatigue. We've seen this in the NBA a bit, especially when a guy wins 2 in a row. They're like, yeah, he is the most valuable player, but like it's boring to give it to him again. Like, is somebody else lifting their team so high? And we saw this a little bit with the Judge Cal Rowley debate in the AL last year. Judge ended up winning because he's doing historic things. Like, you wonder, like, if Juan Soto, does like a 270, 40, 120 with like a 970 OPS situation. Ohtani's like okay as a pitcher and has good hitter numbers. They say, okay, like Juan did more for the Mets this year than Shohei did for the Dodgers. So,
the Mets in that scenario as well, if we're talking like team accomplishments, right? Because they kind of have been weighing that, the voters. The Mets are going to have to win the NL East in order for him to do that, correct?
Yeah, they have to win the division. Let's say they win the division, like he's like the guy on that team.
And it's gonna go into the next topic right here that we were mentioning, and there's some positive news regarding him. But Lindor gets off to a slow start. Juan is kind of carrying the offense like that. We've seen injury history with Bo Bichette. Maybe he goes down. We're all hoping, knocking on wood, that stuff doesn't happen. But there is a history of it there. I think Francisco Lindor is a good litmus test for it too in his 2024 campaign, Mike, where he still finished second in the MVP voting, and there was a lot of dialogue discussing on how much value Lindor brings to the Mets, and how if Shohei Ohtani were to go down, the Dodgers are so loaded. How valuable is he really? And there's no denying that value with Shohei, right? It's the numbers across the board. It's irreplaceable. First 50-50 season that has ever existed. I just think, to your point, the voter fatigue does matter. However, I think he's going to have to hit a little bit higher than 270. Honestly, if Juan can get back to the 290 to 300 range and have the numbers that you're saying, and the Mets win the NL East, I think he absolutely can win the MVP. And it's not that I'm coming at Shohei or thinking that he will get injured or hoping he will get injured. He has an injury history. And if he keeps playing like this going into his mid-30s now, he's going to be 30. This is age 31 or 32 season, I think 32. So for me, Does he break down? How much does the pitching hurt him if he does end up getting hurt there? I don't fully buy him being healthy again, and I know you can say that with any player, but there is a little bit of a track record with Shohei missing time, especially with the Angels. Obviously, been fully healthy with the Dodgers. They took their time with him, especially coming back with pitching. I think there's that sort of scenario there, and just to kind of further expand on the MVP topic, is there anyone outside of those two that you could see winning the MVP? Does Paul Skeens get himself in the conversation potentially? Or are there any other position players? A Tatis having a huge bounce back year, just rattling players off the top of my head. What do you think?
I don't know. I feel like there's gonna be somebody who we're not talking about now who's gonna like have like a huge year for his team and sort of push himself into that conversation. Because I mean, there's a couple of guys like obviously like look at the Braves. Acuna can stay healthy. He's won it before, and like he's somebody you could watch sneak in there. The Phillies have a few guys who like Kyle Schwarber last year was the runner up, like because he have another huge
Right.
power season, be in the mix there. Like I would think
I don't
like
think anyone from the Central is capable of winning MVP. In
unless
my
unless Ellie Dela Cruz puts the Reds on his back, it's a possibility.
he could have a 40. Yeah, he's got 40-40 potential. Well, obviously it would be more than 40 stolen bases, but if he cuts down on the strikeout, sure. So at the end of the day here, Mike, to wrap this segment up, if Juan Soto is going to be MVP this season, does he actually end up doing it? I know that's a poorly worded question, but is Juan Soto going to be the MVP of the NL? Is a better phrase.
I don't think the voter fatigue is set in there yet. I don't. I still think there's way too much like, oh my God, Shohei Ohtani is the greatest thing we've ever seen. Like we have
I
to
agree.
reward his excellence while he's here. Like I think as long as he like pitches decently and hits 40 home runs, he's got the MVP lock on lock.
Absolutely. It's such a difficult argument, and he's such a unicorn in regards to that. I think the only way that Juan Soto actually wins MVP this year, if Otani is healthy, he's going to have to be in contention for the triple crown. Honestly, that's it. That's what he has to do. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Another former MVP candidate that we were just discussing, and this was positive news that we also forgot to mention in between the two of us before we started this show, is Francisco Lindor. He's getting the stitches removed, Mike. Is apparently going to be able to ramp up activities in the next 2 to 3 days. It's kind of on pace where he's supposed to be in his recovery process. So all good news out of Mets so far.
Seems like it. Sounds like he's gonna
I
take a
knocked on
couple of
wood for us.
days to get ready to get going here. They want to make sure that like there's no setbacks. That the scar heals normally before he starts taking. I know Mendoza called this impact like activities, and I don't know exactly what that means, but I assume it's just like stuff that impacts your thumb, like when you where it's the ball hitting your glove, or I don't think he's ready to swing a bat yet, but like probably more fielding work. That's just be like remember he's a little behind his spring training progression compared to everybody else because like he's getting
Yeah.
a 2 week late start. He's probably not be playing games until mid-March around the end of the WBC. So like I would not be shocked if like Lindor is
Mhm.
basically getting like a week and a half at bats before the regular season starts.
Yeah, I think that's the only way the Mets have to approach it. And as good as he's been and healthy in his Mets tenure outside, I think just the oblique injury in year one, he's got to take it a little bit easy here because the Mets are going to need him. And from what it seems like, with all the stories and other incidents regarding this injury, that players need some time to get their power back. So the Mets easing him in makes a ton of sense, as you mentioned. But it's still positive at the end of the day. He's progressing. There have been no setbacks. So that's a strong positive out of Queens. So heading to the Bronx now to discuss our Yankees topics. Jazz Chisholm is making the news. A player who's always outspoken, always known to have a bright personality. Starting to get a little, forgive me if I'm cross-referencing here, but an Isaiah Thomas, Boston Celtics bring up the brick trucks or whatever the hell it was to pay me because I'm playing well and I think I deserve that. Jazz has been a really good Yankee, has been producing fantastic numbers ever since he arrived in the Bronx. Defensively, not necessarily his fault that he's being played out of position in so many different spots, but he has been productive and he wants to get paid big time. What do you think ends up happening here? I'm not sure the Yankees sign him long term.
Well, I mean, the demands I think where he wants like 35 million a year for 8 years at least, which to me, like is he like worth that money? I'm not sure, but like in the market where there's nobody out there who is a big difference maker other than him, theoretically, he could
Right.
get that money from somebody. And I don't think it'll be the Yankees because the Yankees I could look at the situation saying, his asset is speed. If his speed goes down, that contract is a disaster. We don't want to do this. Like I could fairly easily see this being a situation where, maybe they bring in a guy next year to stopgap this and say, okay, in by the summer, it's going to be George Lombard as shortstop and Anthony Volpe at second base. I can see that being what the play ends up being here.
So if they keep Anthony Volpe, yeah, I mean it's a good point. I listen, the 35 million, we know where he's coming from with that number because of all the other players. He's still going to be under the age of 30, I believe, when he's able to sign that contract. Listen, I don't think he's doing himself any favors by saying that sort of stuff. Because if he has a so-so season, that'll backfire. I think he's a fine player, but not having a defined position in a baseball squad that does not have great defensive camaraderie and discipline doesn't bode well for him in the future. I think his bat and speed is so valuable for them, Mike. I think he's positionally versatile in the sense that you could put him out there. Now, is he a gold glover at those multiple positions? Absolutely not. But I appreciate his confidence. I appreciate his candor. But ultimately, I don't see how the Yankees are, you know, having so much difficulty agreeing at the table for Cody Bellinger. And I know they're different players, different situations, that they're just going to go in there and say 8 years, 35 million a season for Jazz Chisholm. I just don't see that. I see it being a more of a shorter term contract, and especially what's going on with the CBA. We still have no idea what's going to happen in that regard. But I also don't see another team paying him 35 million a year. Like, where's that ever going to come from? I see him maxing out at like 30, maybe if that. Where do you kind of see the more fair and realistic deal being for Jazz?
It's tough because you got to also remember here you're staring down the barrel of CBA situation where there's going to be a lockout here. And remember last time we had a lockout, like a lot of guys signed before the lockout to get their bag and ensure they were secure. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's going to be one of those guys because I think like he's going to look and see here. Obviously, the Mets won't have a spot for him. Texas is not signing money here. The Dodgers don't need him. Like they take some of
Right.
the big names out of here. Like you look at maybe the Red Sox theoretically, if some of the younger kids don't pan out the way they expect them to, and they do have money to play with
Right.
after not keeping Bregman, so they would be the one I'd watch in terms of like the team
Interesting.
to be keeping an eye on Jazz.
Yeah, that's a good point because just across the board, as you mentioned, with the big market teams, where's the fit? Where's the money that they're willing to pay or wanting to pay? I just kind of don't see that happening. The Red Sox one is not a bad shout, but we'll see how their players progress. They have a lot of strong youth players that can come up and make a significant impact. I still think Roman Anthony is going to finish top 10 in the MVP voting this season. I think he's that good. We'll talk about those in the future. Speaking of former, winners of awards, positional awards. Garrett Cole, former Cy Young Award winner, still recovering from his Tommy John surgery, starting to throw. Listen, I think the timetable is still around June, right? From where the Yankees kind of expect him to get back at the major league level. At his age, the recovery process, that all makes sense. I respect Garrett Cole so much. I think he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. He's one of the more respectable guys in the game. Um, Works so hard. Unfortunate injury for him, but he's been so good for so long. I just hope he recovers well. This is a good sight to see. I'm happy to see Garrett Cole throwing again. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's nice to see that. I know he's hit 97 during some live BP, which is great to see because I know
All
like
right.
the velos on is the last thing to come back. He's already hitting 97 in February is good. Like there's no need to rush him because the Yankees are still well positioned to make the playoffs, even if he makes his debut on June 15th, as opposed to like mid-May, which I think some of the fans are hoping happens here. The more
All right.
important thing is you get him back and that he's feeling himself, he's shaking rust off, and he's ready to go when you get to the postseason. Like he's on the mound in game one of a playoff series. Like that's what you want. You're not worried right now about like if he makes like 27 starts as opposed to 24.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing too, because the next topic is regarding injuries with the Yankees pitchers. I just think his presence in that locker room as well is much needed because Judge is the guy as far as it goes positionally. the pitchers like Max Fried are obviously in there. It's a solid locker room in terms of, guys who are leaders, experienced players, good players, all-star level players. Obviously, they don't have that same mentality that we have seen in the past with Yankees teams. I think he's just going to be sorely missed because he's one of the best pitchers of his generation. So to have him just even back, his presence, I think is huge for the Yanks. And we'll see when he returns. I hope he doesn't have any setbacks because I think he is one of the more fun pitchers to watch in Major League Baseball when he's on. So good for Garrett Cole coming back.
Yep.
Not so great news in the other area of the Yankees is Cam Schlittler, who was the postseason star last year in their short run. He has some lat issues, Mike. So you just go ahead and expand on it a little bit. Your thoughts. Is this something that Yankees fans should be concerned about? Obviously, you never want to hear any injuries to pitchers in spring training. That's a usual signal that this guy's not going to be ready come opening day. What have you heard? What do you think?
Yeah, from what I was reading up on this, apparently it's something that was going on last year, and he kind of ignored it, and then he said it got better by the postseason. So the fact we're sitting here in February, it hasn't fully resolved, is not great. At this point. Like, you're a lat with a pitcher, even it's on his left side, which is not his throwing side, which is good, but it could impact his mechanics. It could lead to further injury. You're trying to compensate for the lat and get through it. So at this point, I think you kind of have to, slow play this, let this calm down, start the progression slowly and build him up. And I would tell you right now, if he's not picking up baseball at this point and we're a few days away from March, like, I'd be hard pressed to see him in the opening day rotation. Like, he might be a week or two behind if he picks up the ball by Sunday.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just, not picking up a ball like that, and to your other great points about, compensating for the injury. It's also a guy who pitched further into a season more than he ever had before. So isn't necessarily the worst thing that his right arm gets some rest in regard to that. No. And this is one of the strengths of the New York Yankees, that we can talk about Cole going down, Cam not being ready by opening day, and they're still going to be fine as far as pitching goes. They could afford this, and for the time being. However, they can't allow this to linger any further. I don't know necessarily what's on the table for him. Him getting a surgery would be stunning because I think that would have happened or should happen prior to.
Yeah,
but we've seen
like
this
anything right now. It doesn't sound like that's an option right now.
But we've seen this in the past with certain Yankees players, that they kind of don't address some of the injuries that they have and they linger, and then they end up biting them in the ass. Do you think that might be one of those things, or they're just sort of like, this isn't on his throwing arm. As long as that can rehab and it gets better like it did last season, we're willing to go down that path. It feels like that's the way.
Yeah, I would say that seems to be the strategy here because, like, in terms of, him ramping up, he hasn't thrown a bullpen session. He's got this thing going on here. And, like, you have a lot of pitchers who are hurt, whether it's Cole's not going to be back until June. Carlos Rodon, don't forget, he's out for a little bit because he had offseason shoulder surgery. You have, obviously, Clark Schmidt's out for a long time. And then you have Fabian here. I mean, your opening rotation, you have enough guys to fill it right now because it's going to be Fried, Luis Heel, Ryan Weathers they picked up in the trade from Miami.
Who's throwing gas so far, yeah.
Throwing gas. And then you got the two guys you brought in as swingmen, like starter types, and Ryan Yarbrough and Paul Blackburn brought both of them back. But you're dipping beyond that, then it gets a little dicey.
Yeah, where then the exposure of the Yankees farm system is shown just a little bit. They do have talented guys in that system still towards the lower end, but yeah, immediate replacements. It's going to be tough. Again, just one of these guys who I think is great for the sport, and especially the Yankees with his personality. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Hopefully it can resolve itself, but the fact that it came back after last season is not a good sign to me.
Yeah, I think
go ahead.
I wouldn't be shocked here. Like, if this lingers, he's not picking up baseball. Wouldn't be shocked if you're seeing the Yankees grab somebody who's still out there on a minor league deal, one of these veterans, say, okay, like, can you help us hold the fort here until we get some of these guys back? And, like, one guy look at, like, I mean, Max Scherzer's still floating out there, and I know he still wants to pitch. So, like,
has he? I saw a report saying that he was still interested in, like, Toronto or the Mets potentially, that they still have good relationships, or maybe I was just reading elsewhere.
I know he was there. I know speculation about Washington and him too, going back there, sort of being like a veteran stabilizer for that group. Like, somebody in that, like, bucket who's out there. Like I think you see them reaching out to is try and give them some
Yeah.
stability while they let their guys start. Lucas Giolito isn't more of a longer term fix. You get bad news than some of the other guys.
Right. Yeah. We'll see what happens with Max. Hopefully he comes back to Major League Baseball. Someone who is still around in Major League Baseball, somehow, some way. Art Moreno. I'll let you take the wheel on this one. This was one of the big topics that you kind of wanted up here. I'm just going to let you speak, mention it, and then I'll react after.
Yeah, apparently Artie Moreno did an interview recently where they asked him about his team building and his view about fans approaching winning, and he said that the fans he's talked to, I don't know what fans he's talking to out there. Yeah, he said that winning is not in the top 5 priorities for them, like for the Angels fans. He says that they prefer ballpark experience, safety, lower prices. Didn't mention the other 2 things are all those things above winning. So, and it goes to that's something that if you're a PA rep, you are circling that one in red ink and putting it to your CBA talks with you.
I don't understand this guy at all. He is rapidly approaching one of the worst owners that the sport has seen. And he's already kind of been in that conversation to begin with. But you and I having to deal with the Wilpons for so many years, we were like, we don't want to hear about anyone else. We've had to deal with the shit. Artie Moreno is this is comical.
He's
a fan base that had 2 of the best players of a generation, right? If you go with a trio, it's Ohtani, Judge, Trout. Absolutely. From 2010 till now, those have been the 3 best players in baseball, in my opinion. Hitters, positional players. It's not even a conversation. He had 2 of them. I don't even think they had a winning season, if I recall correctly. The lack of team building, all the other issues that we won't bring up that happen in that locker room, the instability of it all, that fan base has been tortured for years by this stupidity of what he and his franchise has done for so long. And even when they do hand out contracts, they're some of the dumbest contracts that we've ever seen, right? Like it's one thing when you pay Albert Pujols that. I don't think many were against that one. But the Anthony Rendon, the CJ Wilson, even giving Hamilton the money after the known issues. This is a guy who doesn't know what he's doing there. And he also was another one of those owners who kind of was getting his feet wet and exploring the possibility of a sale. He probably didn't get.
And then he backed out of it.
And then he backed out of it. Just so we're clear, right? Because he didn't easily get the number that he wanted, and I wouldn't even doubt he probably wanted something stupid. In his mind, it wouldn't even shock me if he was like, "I want 4 or 5 billion. Otherwise, get away from me." Even though the Mets sold for around 2 billion a few years ago, we've seen Tampa been sold recently. We'll see what happens with some of these other franchises. Moreno is just a cancer to the sport, but a necessary tool to use in negotiations for the Players Association, as you mentioned, because this is one of the dumbest and most ignorant statements that I've ever heard in my life, saying that fans don't prioritize winning. It's just, you have a lovely ballpark. You have a relatively passionate fan base, all things considered, with who also plays in that city. And you just spit in their face. I don't see how Art Moreno ever comes out looking good from comments like this.
No, he doesn't. And all the Met fans who are whining for the days of the Wilpons, we have your team for you right here. This is who you should root for.
Go ahead and root for them. Yes, and talking about signing old and washed up players, that's one of them.
He's turned Mike Trout into the poor David Wright of this scenario, where he's so good and he gets hurt and then he has nobody around to help him.
And hey, listen, as much as I like and respect David and Mike, don't sign with those franchises, brother. And maybe you don't have some of those issues. Hoping these 2 players don't stay with their respective franchises. And we'll expand a little bit in regards to the pitchers at the World Baseball Classic as it pertains to the New York Mets. Tariq Skubal, Paul Skeens in the news for the amount of start that they will be making in the World Baseball Classic. Skeens has confirmed that he will be trying to at least start in 2 games, whereas Tariq Skubal is slated for just 1. Your thoughts on that? These are the 2 best pitchers in the game, bar none. I mean, cool, guys. Protect yourself. That's fine. Do what you want. To me, it doesn't faze me.
Well, let's be clear on one thing. This tournament, which I have never been a fan of this tournament because of where it's positioned in the calendar. I think this is very stupid to do it in spring training because you can't get pitchers to buy in for this full time when you are trying to get ready for the season. If you want
to have a good time, yeah.
You want to do this thing? Do what the NHL does, like what the Olympics, or like take a longer All-Star break and stretch it out and do the 2 weeks in the middle as everybody's built up, as opposed to now. But that's a separate conversation. But this tournament is basically runs from March 5th to March 17th. So the most you're getting out of a pitcher if they stay on turn is 2 starts. So Paul Skeen's fine. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to. Tarek Skubal pitching once against Great Britain and then basically saying, I'm out. Peace, guys. I'll come back and watch you guys make it farther. To me, that's just like, why are you even going? Like, what's the point of being there just to say, like, like I just pitched well against Great Britain. I just say I'm pitching my country in contract negotiations. Like, give the spot to somebody who actually wants to be there the whole time.
I think he still wants to contribute in some way while also trying to protect his future
It's
as a
2
starter.
starts. It's 2 starts. He's making one.
I don't disagree with you, but I'm just coming from Tariq's angle here. The whole case with the Tigers, and let's face it, right? He's got a lot of money on the line here. Talking about record-setting money.
Then why even go if you're that worried about it?
I still think that's, considering his age, this is the best time for him to go and do so. I think DeRosa's done a really great job in terms of recruiting by having a lot of guys buy in to a certain extent, right? That we've seen with Skubal. I don't disagree with your angle here, but I totally sympathize and understand. Because if you're yourself are saying, I don't like when this is going, when they're playing, then it's a give or take kind of thing. He's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. I think it's fine for me that he comes in, does 1 start, and he goes. That's fine. There's plenty of talent within Team USA, which we'll get to in a moment. I do, however, understand where you're coming from. Like, why are you going?
It's a hard sell for the tournament itself when you're making this big deal. Like, oh, we have the best 2-time AL Cy Young winner pitching for Team USA. He's like, I'm pitching for 1 start against the worst team in the tournament.
Hey, look good, right? He's at a different point in his career. Otherwise, I think he would be doing what guys like Skeens and Nolan McLean and some other guys are, where they're lining up and willing to pitch and do what it takes. But it's tough when you have so much involved and invested in potentially getting a record-setting deal for a starting pitcher. I think it's just the timing sucks for Skubal, but I'm fine with it.
He's trying to have it both ways, basically. He wants to be a hero and then not put himself at risk too much. But I think because he saw it happen to Edwin Diaz at 23, and he's worried if I do something like that in a game where it's super competitive, I could cost myself my contract. So I'm gonna say I'll go, but I'm pitching against the bad teams that can be in and out, and then I'll just come be a cheerleader when it comes down to winning time. And you can't tell me if you take this tournament seriously and you say this is supposed to be the big baseball international showcase if we don't go to the Olympics. Let's talk about that potentially change for 28. It's hard for me to take it seriously when the best pitcher in the country says, I can't be bothered to stay for an entire term I'm committed to.
Well, I mean, but that just goes back to your original point about just when this is taking place to begin with. All right. We can't get insurance approvals of Francisco Lindor and Carlos Correa. And we know, right, Lindor wasn't even going to be healthy anyways to play in the tournament. So it's kind of a moot point in regards to that. But they still weren't going to be there. Yeah. So when stars are missing like that, it takes away from the allure for sure. He's trying to have his cake and eat it too, as you mentioned. It's just, I think it's the most decent outcome that we could hope for, honestly. I'd rather Tariq Skubal pitch and not pitch again in the tournament than just not seeing him at all. That's just my opinion. I know you also wanted to speak upon Nolan McLean and the potential of him and some other guys pitching in this tournament for Team USA. So go ahead.
Yeah, because the USA is an interesting situation here because I think they lined it up preseason. Basically, their rotation was designed to be Skeens, Skubal. I think Logan Webb was the 3 and Joe Ryan is the 4. Now we know Skubal's not going to be there for more than 1 start. We know that now Joe Ryan's dealing with back issues, so he may not go. So
thankfully, back issues.
Yeah, thankfully back issues. I'm like poor Pablo Lopez. Well, I'm sure you could talk about
it. Go near the knife. Yeah, go follow Tommy John Surgery on Instagram. My good buddies run it. So go ahead if you're interested on any pitcher who's undergone the knife. So go ahead.
Yeah, it makes you wonder who are they going to start? They're going to need more starts, especially if Joe Ryan pulls out here. So you're looking at this and the Mets sent 2 starters there, and Clay Holmes and Nolan McLean. So
yes,
you wonder, and Clay Holmes does have relief experience, so that may be where they use him, but McLean as a starter here would be exciting.
I mean, listen, getting to see his spin rate on the world stage like that is going to be awesome. Again, just come out healthy. This is what's the most stressful part about Major League Baseball is just getting out of spring training, feeling fine. Um, Listen, Holmes, he's going to be used as a Swiss Army knife. I don't think that we can expect this type of managerial display from Mark DeRosa in terms of like, yeah, you come in, give me 5, 6 innings. I think he's just going to have to use what guys make sense for whatever game it's relative to. I mean, they could smash some games. Who knows what positional players could be taking the mound in that regard too. McLean would be awesome to watch. Clay is just a fine professional pitcher. He never is a jaw dropping type. But yeah, I mean, he's been ramping it up. McLean's been ramping it up. We know about Ryan Lambert, a guy who'd been addressed, but he's not going to the World Baseball Classic. That's more Mets stuff. Any other final comments regarding pitching in World Baseball Classic for Team USA?
One thing we forget about, and I forgot to look at the roster again, that Clayton Kershaw is there, and he does not have a contract, and he is retiring after this tournament, basically. So like, he might be the guy who gets the most innings because they don't have to worry about insurance with him.
Yeah, what's he gonna do? He's just gonna retire. There is no injury recovery. Like whatever. If he has to get something, he'll get something. He's had Beckish. Just see, that's probably the number one thing I actually love most about that. And I'm happy you brought that up. Is that Clayton still pitching to this day? It's gonna remind you just a little bit. It's not the same exact thing like for like with Ichiro when he went to go retire in that first series when it was played in Japan. Obviously, these aren't actual Major League Baseball games, but this is a great send off for Kershaw. We'll see what ends up happening. Could be Japan versus USA in the final again. DR has a phenomenal team. We always know Puerto Rico is talented, but obviously their top dogs probably won't be there. Listen, yeah. Kershaw, let it rip, brother. I mean, if your back starts barking, then we might not see you, but it could be a lot of fun with him. Go ahead.
Yeah, say next week, I'm sure we'll have more WEC because the tournament starts next week.
Yeah, so we'll see what goes on there. As far as the final topic of the day goes, we are heading to the ATL, where the Braves injuries are starting once again. Injury riddled season last year for this franchise. Having major issues, honestly, after their World Series, staying healthy. Listen, am I really gonna feel bad for the Atlanta Braves and their fans and how they treated Mets fans and how they laughed about all the injuries over the years and all that sort of stuff? No, not necessarily, but I do feel bad for these players. So we got two key injuries to them. Schwellenbach has right elbow inflammation. His IL date was on February 10th. He's going to the 60-day IL. Hopefully get to see him back in the summer. He underwent arthroscopic surgery to remove bone spurs from his elbow on the 18th, so just last week. He could return in June or July, but the Braves have not put a timetable on that one. And as far as Hurston Waldrep goes, he has right elbow inflammation. He has not been placed on an IL date-wise, but they're expecting his return to be on summer 2026. He also went under arthroscopic surgery on just 2 days ago to get loose bodies removed from his elbow, and he could return June, July, but very much like Spencer Schwellenbach, there is no timetable for his return. So two key injuries for the Atlanta Braves already as far as it goes to pitching. They still have Sale. They still have Elder. I mean, this is the one team, I think, in the NL East that could ill afford to start off the year with injuries again, knowing how Albies, Riley, and Acuna have been in the past 24 months too. It kind of seems like it doesn't end for the Braves.
Yeah, they also have position player injuries too. I mean, Sean Murphy's out till May. We have Ha-Seong Kim's out till May. Also,
Kim was a huge loss. Who they signed specifically just as their shortstop for this year.
Yeah, like it's tough when you start seeing guys like that go down in camp, and it makes you more curious on what they did in the offseason because their two big pickups were Kim and Robert Suarez for the bullpen. So like,
Suarez ain't spring chicken either. He's mid-30s.
Yeah, it made you wonder because they kept Razzle Iglesias. They tried to build a stronger back of the bullpen, maybe lessen the reliance on the starters. But like there was a long time when Framber Valdez was sitting out there. I was sitting there thinking, boy, the Braves should be all over that. Like the Braves could use a guy like that, and the fact they didn't get him makes you wonder like what exactly the plan was down there.
Floating this idea out there, and watch the Braves win the division after I say this, but is there a scenario in which the Atlanta Braves get to such a slow start to the season? And I think they're so talented on paper that I think they'll likely overcome some of their injuries so far. But there's a scenario in which, this doesn't go away. and they get to the trade deadline and they say to themselves, could be the Mets or the Phillies distancing themselves. But if the Marlins are right there with them or ahead of them, is there any part of Alex Anthopoulos that is saying to himself, maybe try and trade a few guys? I personally think the Braves should anyways. Guys like Albie should be out of there. I would consider trading Chris Sale 100% at his age and what kind of value you can get back in terms of that. I
Well,
would even
they just extended him also, Chris Sale.
so I think that there is, considering his value at his age and how he's still being productive and where the Braves are, I'm not saying for them to restart and blow it all up. But I am saying reload a little bit, retool, kind of get ahead of the curve. Because the Phillies are going to be slowing down within the next 2 years or so, in my opinion. We'll see what happens with the Mets. The Marlins, competitive now, always change on a dime with that franchise. Should Anthopoulos actually consider, if these injuries linger and the Braves have a weak season, to trade some key players from this core?
It's tough because I think you're looking at this core in terms of like, they had that long period where they were getting everybody to sign the sweetheart deals and
Right.
donate like $3 million to the Braves Foundation every year. Like there was like a lot of those deals are starting to creep towards the end there, especially Acuna's deal. I think they have a couple of team options coming up still in terms of that. But like, that core of Matt Olson, Riley, Acuna,
Michael
Albie
Harris.
fell off the face of the earth. Harris had a bad year last year, got better towards the end.
Yeah.
Like Acuna after this year has 2 team options left, and then he's gone. So I think like you're looking at this like I think I would go the other way. I try and say like I have to try and win more Ronalds here because when he hits the market, if he's actually good, I'm not be able to keep him. How much he's going to try and command the open market.
I think it really depends on how he ages in terms of like his physical mobility
Yeah,
in the outfield, because there is a scenario in which, like, if he never, I'm not saying he has to return to that elite athletic player that he once was, but he has to be able to move.
yeah,
And a couple ACL surgeries, they're not the most devastating, but baseball movement in the field is very lateral, which
yeah.
is a huge issue with ACL injuries. Acuna is so talented as a hitter that, yeah, I think you're right. Worst case, he hits the open market. Like, teams, I could see him moving to left field, right? Or a team says you're too good of a hitter, we'll pay you like top dollar and maybe consider you a DH. I agree with you. I'm not, unless he loves staying in Atlanta and staying with the Braves, which I'm not really fully convinced of with that franchise.
I mean, there are things that he's not happy about that whole contract, how that played out, and like especially like that he feels like there are rumblings that like he's felt like underpaid and like that he got like not gonna say he got taken advantage of, maybe like he was like convinced to sign like earlier than he should have and like bought out, gave up too many free agent years.
There's been a lot of friction there with him and them. We've seen that. Obviously Snitker is no longer in the picture. And Snitker wasn't really even, he came to his defense from time to time, right?
Yeah.
But I just think that this whole persona of what Acuna is down there and how people perceive him, and I know there's tons of Braves fans that love and adore him because he's just a super talent, one of the best players in Major League Baseball when healthy. But there's just always seems to be something between the two of them, him and the franchise, whether how he's being treated, how former players are talking about him. It just doesn't feel like the best cultural fit long term that he seems happiest with. I'm not convinced by that. I really do think Ronald Acuna could be playing elsewhere once his contract is up. Truthfully, and I know you're kind of alluding to that. I'm not fully convinced by it either, but I do think that they should trade Ozzy Albies as soon as they can.
Well, I mean, Albie's at this point, I mean, he's got 1 year left at $7 million. I mean, they can just buy him out. Like, I don't think they're worried about that.
No, like trading him to get something back. If a team has, the possibility of, going to the next level, right? Or like they're in contention and they're willing to give up prospects in a scenario like this to pick up a player like that. If you're the Braves, with how Albies has been health wise and then the inconsistency in terms of production, he's still very talented, good player, but he's not reliable anymore. I think the Braves need more reliability within this squad because now they're just becoming a hospital. And I don't think that this change, like we've seen it for years. How many times have we watched teams and they were nowhere near as talented as this with the Braves and the Mets? So making that clear. But how many times did we see injuries just linger and then you're kind of like hoping for it to change? It's one thing if it's one or two guys being injured. We're talking about like nearly half a dozen guys that are on that border of, is this guy injury prone or is this just a hiccup? Because I think it's closer to injury prone with some of these guys.
Yeah, I gotta say too, like if we do you know offhand who Atlanta plays to start the season?
I do not.
I'm gonna look that up real quick because
Okay, no, I can. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead as you get your point. I'll pull it up.
yeah, because remember last year, like that 0-7 trip out west to the Dodgers and Padres really sunk them, never able to get
Yes.
out that hole. So like if you're off to like a start here, I'm gonna look at their schedule here. They start the year Kansas City, the A's, Arizona, the Angels. They're better set up this year than they were last year. So like I would say if you are seeing that schedule and you come out of the first 2 weeks like 5-9, like 4-10, are you starting those questions again?
Yeah, I think just even in April as a whole for them is not too overly difficult. When you're looking at a lot of the home games, home to the Guardians, Marlins, that's probably the toughest stretch that they will have because they have those two, and then they have to go on the road to Philly for three. And then the Tigers at the end of the month, and they play Philly twice. But they do have a road trip that is Arizona and the D-backs. They're playing a lot of West Coast teams, obviously, as you mentioned, with the Athletics. They're opening up against the AL, and they don't play their first the first game they do play against an NL team is in Arizona, which is a really difficult spot. They play 4 out there. And then you're really only playing your divisional sides after that. So it's a huge kind of start, as you mentioned. 2 series against the Phillies that early in the season does matter. Yeah, I listen, like with Atlanta, for me, the only question is health. If Atlanta stays healthy, they're in contention for the NL East. However, we're already starting before March that they have these key injuries to them. I'm not fully convinced by Atlanta this season in terms of health. I think really they are the best bet for the division in the NL East if fully healthy. I just not really convinced at this point that that happens. What is your kind of like scope on the Braves overall this season? We'll get into that in future episodes for futures bets, but as far as like the Braves are today on February 25th, Mike Phillips, what do you think?
I feel like they're definitely they're going to be better than last year. They're going to be definitely in that wild card hunt but the fact they're getting so many key guys hurt this early and missing big chunks of time is not a good sign if you're trying to back the Braves as your division winner, in my opinion.
They to me, like I honestly think like on paper they're the best team in the division still. I think just top to bottom, they've been that. I think they kind of deserve that. Philly, I think, have their clear holes. I think the Mets have more question marks than holes, right? Just Atlanta for me is just a question mark of injuries. And we saw their season kind of capitulate after that. What would Chris Sale broke a rib trying to complete a game against the Mets in May or whatever the hell it was. Which is like so ironic to kind of see the perception of like how teams play against the Mets. The Mets are losers; they're nobodies. Why are you diving for a ball? Why are you out in the ninth inning in this month? And at this point in the season, I kind of digress with that. That's just me getting annoyed as a Mets fan. But the change at manager is that question mark to you? Snicker has been a reliable guy. Kind of seemed like his voice was getting tired in that locker room. Maybe that change helps. They haven't been scared to do that. I think who was it? It was Freddie Gonzalez was the manager prior to
Yep.
Snicker.
Yeah, Freddie was the last guy. Like for me, it's like with them, I don't think a manager make a big difference. I think it's just a matter if the guys are on the field or they're not.
Well said. Well played. Any other final topics or conversations and stuff that gets brought up? I know Carson Bench just collected 2 hits today in spring training. So if Mets fans want to feel happy about that, that's definitely an interesting one. So he answers back with 2 hits after Michael Talkman hit a bomb yesterday, a 3-run home run. And his comments were, I thought interesting in the aspect of he was saying how Cohen, Stearns, Mendy, they're all transparent about what his situation is. If you hit and Carson doesn't really progress the way that they were hoping in spring training, you're going to have a job. If not, best of luck elsewhere.
Yep.
Do you like that approach from that? I love this approach. I think it's flawless. I think it's a win-win for the Mets. Worst case, Bench takes his time in AAA, and Talkman handles right field for time being, and then Bench is ready. Or Bench makes it out of spring training, and who knows what happens with Talkman. Likely doesn't stay, right? What do you think?
He could stay. I mean, they could just send him a
Right.
one day, not a split contract.
Do you think he would accept something like that? I mean, kind of where he was at this point in the offseason when he signed. How many other options does he have?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I think like Talkman, I'm pretty sure has that deal where you can like buy out if you're not you can like basically like get bought out or you have to like they have to release him if he's not on the roster at a certain point. So I could see that being a situation where they're like, if he's hitting, like we'll just keep him and then like worst case, like we'll just DFA him later if he's not hitting.
Yeah. Um, Love that pickup by the Mets. We'll see what ends up happening there. Again, guys, this was another test recording, but we will have better graphics for you guys come next week. We will hopefully have guests on soon enough and expanding more and more. But be sure to like up the video, comment on everything, subscribe to Mike Phillips everywhere at mphillips331, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, all over the place. Sky Guys podcast, and some other fun stuff coming from you in terms of writing, correct?
Yeah, obviously, like I do like the a lot of stuff over at fan side for like the college basketball stuff right now. Like right before you hopped on there, I wrote the weekly bubble watch column for fan side. And Marty, I don't know if you're a big college hoops guy right now. The bubble stinks. The bubble's not good.
Well, I have strong opinion. You know me. Mostly these days, I'm just kind of like ACC or Duke. If I can catch some of the big games, sure. I'm not a big Cam Boozer guy in terms of the NBA. I think he's going to be just a fine player. I don't think he's anything close to past Duke prospects. I was so unimpressed by Michigan, Mike. I was
Yeah,
so unimpressed by it.
yeah,
I'm not even overly impressed by the Duke team either. I
yeah,
think this is kind of a wide open tournament. Is that
yeah.
kind of what people are saying?
As somebody who's watched Michigan a lot, like that defensive game plan Duke had against them was flawless because Duke literally took away their interior like presence, and they have the three bigs they rely on with Damar, Landeborg, and Morez Johnson. Like they took Mara was in foul trouble, and then they were able to basically put Michigan back outside, and they had, I think, the best defensive game plan anybody's had against them in a long time. So that's something I think that if you watch this team more than that game, just that game, you think, wow, they're overrated. But if you watch this team a lot, they're very good, and they will use that tape to fix a lot of the stuff that we saw in that Duke game.
We'll see. I think college basketball is so week to week, as we all know. It's always been that way. We'll see. I'm not really fully convinced by this Duke side. Only last year is one of the few years that I really thought they were going to do it, but we'll see what ends up happening there. Best of luck to Michigan State. Our Iona Gales have to, they're just going to have to win the tournament, the MAC tournament. It's just,
That's every year they have to win the conference tournament.
Of course, but like in terms of just feeling good, like it's just I don't. It's obviously not the days of Tim Kluse and that era, but it's still year one of a program. It doesn't matter if like Tobin Anderson was in year two. They obviously had Pitino before that. There's been a revolving door of coaches at the current moment. And I know that's not like uncommon across college basketball and college sports these days, but I think they need a little bit more stability. It was annoying because it was a good start to the out of conference at the start of the year. And then you just see the struggles, the double overtime loss, all that kind of stuff. But we're not going to bore people with Iona Gales basketball. We'll do that as the year goes along. Any other fun stuff, by the way, Oscars on the way that you're interested in or have brought up and just in conversations? Because I still have to see all the performances, but I am willing to bet on Best Actor award because I think that one's a little bit more wide open than people think.
Yeah, I'm still a bit behind on some of those. I still haven't moved past the 4 that we watched. Those are the last time we talked.
So we're still both slacking. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to get caught up there. Like there was a lot of stuff going on with the main pod just of the suffering here. Our friend Troy Moriello came by. We had a nice conversation about the college basketball season. A lot of fun there. He played the bubble watch game, which is a fun game. But there's a website called bracketologist.com where you can put 4 teams up there, compare their resumes blindly, and say, okay, which one would you pick if you were on the committee? Right. So we played a couple rounds of that. That was fun. And my friend Dan DMRT dropped by. He was a big Survivor guy. Survivor 50 premieres tonight. So we talked about that.
Yeah, you're a big Survivor guy. I don't think I've seen anything outside of, honestly, on TikTok. This is how dated I am. And you're going to laugh at this. I know you will. Good. All I see, and this isn't even recent with Survivor, this Boston Rob guy.
He's everywhere.
And his, I guess his now wife was also a contestant on the same Survivor season.
Yeah, like he's probably he's one of the Mount Rushmore people from that show.
Okay. Well, that's all I know about that. I know that the guy Jeff, whatever, that hosts it.
Yeah, he's been there forever.
Yeah, he's been there forever. And then Boston Rob. That's as far as my.
And Busted Rob went on the Traders too, and now hosts their podcast over there with Bob Drag Queen.
Yeah, but with Traders, I knew about Traders, and I've seen Traders because of having worked at Peacock. But obviously, that's sort of your thing now that you love it. And again, you guys can just follow me everywhere at Martino Puccio. A lot more baseball clips coming up. This is going to be a very fun show. We're going to have huge guests on in the coming weeks, presented by U Stadium, going with U Stadium on all the social clips. So be sure to follow U Stadium basically everywhere. The majority of the clips will be live on U Stadium MLB. So shout out to everybody over there. We appreciate all the support that has come in at the start of the show, and we hope to see more as the season progresses. Other than that, you can catch us next week, guys. Take care.